the next section that we're going to jump into is the return, right? The journey home. Now, how can we go home if we don't know where we came from? You know, you got to really have a good, solid understanding of where you came from in order to go home. And I talked a little, just a touch last week about, and maybe it was not the best metaphor to use. I talked about going on vacation. And the reason I meant to talk about going on vacation was to talk about the fact that you can leave your home and you can go have an experience. Your home is still waiting for you, hopefully. Your home will be waiting for you when you go back, right? Especially if we're talking about spirit now. A spiritual home will always be there when you're ready to go home. When you're on vacation, if I went on vacation and I went to a tropical island, I'm only going to be there for, say, 3 days, and I go in and I see the shack that I'm staying in needs to be repaired, I'm probably not going to waste my time repairing that shack. You know, I'm going to say, I'm going to go lay on the beach. This is what I'm here to vacation. I'm not here to work. And it's not my home, so I'm not going to fix it. I'm going to just go enjoy it, then I go home. This world is kind of the same way. We're here. We're not here to fix the world. That's what many people, a lot of confusion comes into play. Oh, we've got to fix the world. It's not our job to fix the world. The world is perfect if we could get out of our perceptions and our attachment to the meaning we've given it. And so that brings us right back to the beginning again. And I wanted to...
That is a big shift.
It's major, isn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to, and that's what everybody who is trying to be good is trying to fix the world and teach everybody else to be good. And that's a major undertaking that, that you'd never get accomplished, I suppose, or nobody ever has.
It's a forever job.
So it's a totally different concept to think, well, you don't need to do that. You don't need to try. You just need to accept and observe and have fun, like going to your tropical hut for a short vacation.
Have a martini,
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is, and this is where I see that a lot of the teachings have gone astray. And we're gonna go back and rehash all of that about the concept of good and evil, and the whole concept of opposites and dualistic thinking, as opposed to mono and seeing it all as one. Last week I talked about getting something out of the Bible from Isaiah, when God said God created this and created the evil as well, created both, right? God created it all. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's something very, very similar to that in here. When God talks about all of it existed, everything existed before linear time. I just paraphrase that because he didn't put it exactly like that, and I'd have to go dig it out of here to find the exact verbiage. But basically, the Bhagavad Gita talks about the Lord being before linear time. Also, you existed before linear time, and that's in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita.
How did they describe linear time? Before what? Before creation or something?
Yeah, just before.
Before, okay.
I'd have to go back and find it. Okay.
Always was, yeah, okay.
Always was, always will be. The Bible, and I put this back up here again for us to understand a little bit deeper. It says God is love. Now, I think we've all come to the agreement that God is in fact love. The Bible also says God is that which never changes. So if we took those two tenets and we see, wait a minute, love never changes. How many have fallen in and out of love? You ever been in love and fall out of love? Well, if you fell out of love, you never experienced real love, because it doesn't change. What changes is our perceptions, our view, our attachment, the meaning that we apply to everything and everyone. That changes all the time. And many of us will have an instant appraisal of everyone we encounter. And this is one of the reasons why I chose the title Prophet or Madman, because to many I am the madman. This very concept of what we're talking about is mad to the world. Of course it is. Because they are in the mindset of God is good, we must learn to be good. But anyway, we talked about the moment of choice in the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden represents life and it represents death, according to our story, right? We've all heard the story numerous times. They ate the apple, and according to our story, God said they were going to die, so they died. They died, then they got thrown out of paradise, and then the journey begins. The rest of the story. That's the foundation. There's the beginning. They were alive. They died. According to the story now. I didn't make it up. We can go back and reread it. But they're dead. So then we look and we say, all right, love and life, and many times these would be interchangeable. You could say, God is love, God is life.
Okay.
Right? So what's the opposite of life is death. What's the opposite of love? That would be fear. According to our story, fear did not exist. Adam and Eve had no fear of anything. There was nothing to be afraid of until they chose to judge creation. God wanted them, don't do it. They died. They became afraid.
Wasn't the first duality though Adam and Eve?
Well, again, let's go back. Let's go back to a bigger picture, and let's look at eternity. Okay, here's the bigger picture. The bigger picture is eternity. Now, can you accept when Einstein said the past, the present, and the future is nothing but a persistent delusion of consciousness? Mm-hmm. Can you accept that? Mm-hmm. You do? Anybody else accept it? I personally do accept it. I say it's true. Okay. If the past, the present, and the future is nothing but a persistent delusion of consciousness, when, in terms of ultimate reality now, because that would be ultimate reality, when is that moment taking place where Adam and Eve are choosing?
Right now.
Right now.
Huh?
Right now. Absolutely. And if it's taking place right now, aren't we in the exact same position of Adam and Eve right now?
Yeah.
We're all facing that same moment of choice.
Which
Every
means
day.
the future we
Every
would
day.
be too.
I'm sorry?
The future we would be too.
Now we're gonna get it. Yeah, it would be true. This is one of the reasons why when they asked Jesus about the end in the Gospel of Thomas, right?
Yep.
They asked him when the end's coming, and what did he say? That which you seek already exists. Huh? How can it already exist? He said, you just don't see it. You don't recognize it. Well, if we get caught up in linear time, that's a whole different story, and we're gonna deal with that. Right now, we're looking at absolutes. We're looking at absolutes. We're looking at eternity versus linear time.
Okay, which one is the vacation?
Which one is the vacation?
Linear time or eternity? If you're in eternity and hanging about, wouldn't that be a vacation to go down and be in physical life?
I guess it would be a vacation, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And sometimes our vacations can be pleasant, and sometimes they can be nightmarish.
Yeah, well, you don't know. Yeah, you could get a flat
It could
tire
be
and
either
get
or.
back. Yeah.
Right.
And are we not having moments? Certain moments are very nice, and certain moments are very unpleasant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Depends on where you're coming from.
I'm going to talk about the Bhagavad Gita for a second. The Bhagavad Gita says the purpose of human life, because now what we just described, the vacation, which is, I would say, the death experience,
Okay, you want to say that? Yeah.
which is fear-based.
Yeah.
Okay? To me, I would say this is also human. The ego. Ego would be synonymous with the human mind. And we all know what a human mind is, how they operate. I think we all have one,
How we're told to operate. Yeah.
right? We're all pretty familiar with the human mind. We all know how to use it. Watch me, see? I can even drink. So everything we seem to do in this world, in this realm, we're using our human mind. Okay? The human mind is based on judgment. That's the human mind. It's based on judgment. And up here I talked about the difference between love and fear. And I gave a definition. And here's the definition that I would like us to look at so that we're kind of on the same page when we're talking about things. I said love is awareness without memory. Wow. But now we're talking about agape love. We're talking about spiritual love. We're talking about God. We're talking about a different experience, or reality with a big R. Reality with a big R would be awareness without memory. This is where eternity could be experienced. Not linear time, but eternity, where the past, the present, and the future is nothing but a persistent delusion of consciousness. If you became conscious enough, you would recognize that you're not limited to linear dimensional thinking. We're not. We believe we are limited to linear dimensional thinking when we look at things relative to an awareness based on memory. So the two different states?
So,
One is with
so I
memory.
shouldn't worry too much if I can't remember names, or my memory's not that good. So that's not a bad thing. Get all the way to Alzheimer's, you really...
Hey, look at that. You're waking up, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It could be a good thing to lose your mind.
Could it be so detrimental to the parent to be able to deal with awareness without memory?
If a parent, now let me say this, if a parent is truly going to be interacting in a moment without memory,
They have to take a bullet in the head.
what they're going to do is they're going to be hearing spirit louder than their ego. Now when I say spirit, you know, the Course in Miracles talks about the Holy Spirit, the Bible talks about the Holy Spirit. In this book we hear about Krishna, right? We hear about hearing and being guided and directed. You're either going to be motivated by your ego, which is an awareness based on a memory, which is purely judgmental, right? You're going to see the world as opposing forces, not as one, but as opposing forces. There's good and evil. It's positive and negative. And everyone in the world just about would agree that that's the condition of the world.
And it's staying out of that you're
Right.
trying for.
That's the human way. And we have schools to teach us about human. We have schools to teach us how to become better humans. And we have religions that have been teaching for years, become better, 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 better. And that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to say that they don't belong. They belong here. But there is a higher reality to experience if you so choose. And that higher reality is to become awakened. I'm going to put over here, awakened. And asleep. The Bible talks about awake and asleep. The Bible says that after Adam and Eve ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that they went to sleep. Never does it say they woke up. You ever remember where man woke up? I remember reading, I didn't read the whole thing, I only read bits and pieces. But in the Old Testament, it talks about man being asleep. Talks about, in Psalms, I think it is, it says, now is time for man to awaken from the sleep, and so on and so on and so on. But it never says they woke up. And in reality, they haven't woken up. In reality, they're still having a nightmare. And you're in it. We're all participating in it, right here, right now. Now, There is a way out of the nightmare, and the way out of the nightmare is to wake up. It's just like if you're having a bad dream at night, you're going to be squirming about and doing all the until you wake up. You're stuck in that nightmare, but the moment you wake up, it's a whole different experience. Oh, it was only a dream. This life here, in reality, is only a dream, but we don't quite grasp that yet. And this is from the Bhagavad Gita also. The purpose of the human life is to return to the abode of the Lord. So it says the purpose of the human life is. Okay? I can buy that. Anybody have a problem with that? When our consciousness is contaminated by matter, by matter,
Yeah.
material things,
Oh,
material
matter.
world, matter. Oh, that's my New England accent, I guess. When our consciousness is contaminated by matter, this is called our conditioned state. According to the Bhagavad Gita, that's our conditioned state. The false ego is the belief that one is the product of matter. Okay? Does that make sense?
One.
What it's basically one, meaning self. Okay? One, meaning the self.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
One is the product of matter. In other words, it's our attachment to physical form. It's forgetting our spiritual nature. It's forgetting our true identity of who and what we are. We become attached to the materialistic world and the things and circumstances around it. We're lost in that. That's what it's talking about. We're in the conditioned state. You're not in the awakened state, in other words. The whole aim of the Bhagavad Gita is to teach us to reach the state of pure consciousness. Okay? So, in other words, to wake up. Right? To go back to where we began. Because did God create us as pure consciousness, or did God create us as some little insignificant thing that's trying to develop? This is where our belief in linear time, or our belief in an eternity where linear time is not a restriction, has to come into play. If you believe in linear time, then by all means you're going to spend eternity trying to grow into something. In my book, I have a little diagram where I show the soul in its perfect state, pure consciousness. And then I show it as different stages of ego, and how once the ego is purged, we return back to our perfect state. We went on vacation and we go back home. Okay? That's what we're really doing. We're lost from seeing the bigger picture when we're looking at the smaller picture. Remember the thing? You can't see the forest for the trees?
Yeah, but if we chose to go up on a mountain and just spend the rest of our life there, we're not being of the world and we're not learning any.
I would say if you go hide on a mountain, you're not necessarily
You're not involved in spiritual life.
Everybody is going to experience every moment. We're here, we're experiencing. What you experience is directly related to what you choose to experience. If someone chooses to go off onto the mountain, then that's where they happen to be, and they belong exactly what they just chose. That's where they belong. I personally feel like for myself, I couldn't go sit on a mountain somewhere because I know I'm here to share and to interact with others. I would say, ultimately, that the highest goal that we could attain is to live amongst people that are asleep while you're awake. This is what we're here doing. Is that easy? It's the hottest thing we're ever going to deal with. It's the hottest thing that you could ever possibly do is to live in a sleeping world from the awakened state. That's difficult. First of all, everything that you were brought up to believe, you've got to look at in a whole different light. This is why the room is so full. You can see how people gravitate towards this. I mean, I'm not saying that they're not going to at some point. But ultimately, dualistic thinking has to be collapsed in order to experience something greater. Has to. I mean, you can choose to just keep going on this path. And we're going to talk about that in here. We're going to talk about the human experience. And that's what the Bible basically is really all about. The Bible is about, first of all, it talks about God creating everything and creating it perfect. How many believe that God created an imperfection in terms of creation? Anybody believe He created, it created, made a mistake? You think there was a mistake made in creation? By this omnipotent,
I don't think there was a
omniscient-
mistake. I sometimes wonder if there wasn't an experiment.
An experiment? Okay. Well, again, you got to recognize that God being omniscient and omnipotent and omnipresent, God is beyond linear time.
Right?
Okay?
I think God has a
So-
good sense of humor.
God has a great sense of humor. How could we laugh if God didn't have a sense of humor that we could, that we could use? I mean, everything that can possibly exist exists only because it exists in the confines of God's consciousness. There is nothing that can exist outside of the consciousness that created the whole and is the summation of the whole. Anybody believe that there is? Something, it's almost like, artificial intelligence. Oh, they're going to create a robot, and somehow this robot's going to be able to just start thinking on its own and become smarter than the creator. I mean, I've seen movies like this, but the truth of the matter is, all consciousness, bar none, belongs to the Creator. This is why in the Bible we read last week in Isaiah, maybe I should go back and get it, where God said God created even the evil. Where else could it come from?
Yeah, that is.
Well, I don't know, that I
unusual
wouldn't have a
concept.
problem with. Huh? What's that?
That is an unusual concept that makes
That God
sense.
created,
Makes sense in this discussion, but most people wouldn't.
Now, first of all, the majority of people are going to reject it primarily because our religious teachings teach us
Right.
that there is opposing forces here, that there is good and evil. I was brought up to believe God created Satan, then Satan got out of hand, and now they're doing battle.
Right.
Oh my God! Come on!
okay.
God's doing battle with Satan? I mean, how absurd could this be? Now, I'm not saying that in this realm, in this dimension, we don't have positive and negative energies. We do. But what is this realm? Is this realm ultimate reality? It's not. It's the dream. That's why the Course in Miracles says, that which is real cannot be threatened. What is real? God is love. God is that which never changes.
So could the fifth dimension exist right here?
What, say that again, a fifth?
The fifth dimension could exist right here.
Where is here? See,
And Daddy Dee.
yeah, Daddy Dee. Well,
But in
let's
the
see.
fifth dimension, this could be a river we're sitting in.
What is the fifth dimension?
Well,
We're dawning of the age of Aquarius.
Define it, would you,
Where's that about?
I remember
for
that.
this discussion, would you define?
Well, fourth dimension, my understanding is the astral plane.
Is
And
it
then
what?
Astral plane? Astral plane.
Okay.
Astral plane.
astral plane.
Astral plane.
Okay.
And then the fifth dimension is the spiritual plane. I understand it to be
Or would you say the mental plane? Would you say mental or spiritual?
Spiritual.
See, everything is spiritual. I mean, the Bible also says this. The Bible says, and this is God speaking in Psalms, if you make your home in hell, I am there. Okay? God, this is it. Everything that exists, be it here, be it whatever label we want to slap on something,
Right.
you're existing in the body of God.
Well, true, but I
Okay.
mean, like Pluto. I don't walk on Pluto. I'm here on Earth. So it's like it's the fifth dimension or the
Okay.
up on Pluto. I don't know.
Oh,
Now, here we go with.
what if,
We're getting lost into the form. Let's get lost in form, I guess. All right, we said before we have dimensions of time and space. They operate at different frequencies. But what's interesting is, here we have, we're going to put on this side good and evil.
now see, what you're gonna be putting down is mythologies on both sides of Central.
Okay, mythology, but
Mythologies.
let's talk about vibrations for now. Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about
Mechanisms.
vibrations and let's talk about energies and frequency.
Yeah.
Like for example, electricity. Electricity has positive and negative, and you can't have one without the other. I could take that wire apart and I can grab the positive side, nothing will happen. I can grab the negative side, nothing will happen. If I grab them both, I'm going to be, I'm going to get a little bit of shock. Okay? But the
Okay,
point
good.
being, if we look at all of the dimensions of time and space, when you're in a neutral state, all of time and space is interconnected. All of it. All these dimensions. If I'm up here, I can still connect with this dimension. If I'm out here somewhere, I'm not going to. If I'm on the good side, I'm not going to connect with this dimension up here unless I come to a point where I'm neutral. Now I can connect up here,
Okay.
right? If I'm on this side, I'm not going to. Here, I can connect to this side and vice versa. I can go back and forth. And we do this all the time. We go from positive to negative, positive to negative, positive to negative. Good and evil, good and evil, good and evil. You know, we see good people go bad, we see bad people get good. You know, I mean, but that's just this dimension. Actually, all of this is the body of God. It's all God, every bit of it. All the frequencies within creation, every dimension within creation, it's all God. And we're going to call that spirit.
So then to be too good is not a desirable goal.
It's not a desirable goal. What does the Bhagavad Gita say about that? Okay, in here the Bhagavad Gita says, "Blessed is the man that laments neither for the living nor the dead." A. Okay, they even got a nice little picture in here. They show that somewhere in here. Okay. Look at that. See that little picture here? Now this is an observer, right? This is the way I read
Okay.
that picture, right? He's observing, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's observing the living, he's observing the dead. And let's look at that for a second and look at what that really is trying to tell us.
He's showing the soul in the picture of the people, whether they're alive or dead.
But you see, it's saying, "Blessed is the man that laments neither for the living nor the dead." So what is it saying? Is it saying the guy's a non-caring, cold son of a bitch? You know?
But it's non-judgmental.
It's non-judgmental.
Yeah.
And the purest state that any of us can attain as spiritual beings is to move into non-judgmental, unconditional love. That's our highest state that's attainable by anyone. Because this is the highest state that God is. If you're going to talk about frequencies. Of course, God is all. But this is the awakened state. That's purely awake. Unconditional love.
In this picture, it sort of strikes me that this wise man is detached, and
Mhm.
where some people might jump in and say, well, let's help that guy up off the floor, and let's get him food and water, and let's
Exactly.
give him money and clothes, and
Okay, yeah.
and he's more detached, and again, goes a bit against most of our goodness training,
It does, absolutely.
where we're supposed to jump in and fix everything.
And fix it. Your job is not to fix anything. You know, and this is something I made a point in my book, and we're going to get into it a little bit later. I didn't mean to jump in this fast, but but when Jesus said, towards the end of his ministry, first of all, let's go to the beginning of Jesus' ministry, right? He's collecting people and he's trying to teach them and he's trying to enlighten them, really is what he's trying to do. He's trying to enlighten the world. So, at the beginning of his ministry, what did he say? You guys are of the world, I'm not. Right? He was very, very clear about that. You're of the world, I'm not. He said, my kinship is not of this world. Towards the end of his ministry, he's praying. And this is in the Bible. I don't know exactly where we could find it, but it's in there. He said, Father, I pray for those you've given me. I don't pray for the world, which is what this guy's doing, right? He's observing. I mean, they were being crucified, there's slaves, there's all kinds of different things happening, which it reminds me of another parable that I just recently looked at in the Bible, where Jesus was, and I think we talked about this last week. Remember the Roman soldier went to Jesus, and this Roman soldier had a slave,
Yeah.
right? And he asked Jesus to heal his slave because, you know, this was one of his favorites. Anyway, Jesus went and healed the slave. He didn't say, free him. He didn't say, you know, this is wrong. He just healed him. That's it. Left the condition exactly as he saw it. He interacted with it when he was addressed to interact. Right? He did, in that moment, what he was guided to do, but he didn't try to fix the problem. Right? How many of us would try to fix the problem? Let's free the slave. This is not right. The world is looking at things the wrong way. Okay, well, Christ is saying, look,
Yeah.
you guys are of the world, I'm not. My kinship's not of this world. I'm not here to fix the world. Right? Remember when he said, I didn't come here for peace. I came here carrying a sword. To put mother against daughter, father against son, husband against wife. What he was trying to say was, look, I'm here to wake you up, enlighten you to unconditional love. Now, to a human, I've heard many people look at me and say, well, you're pretty damn cold. You know, you have no thoughts of caring about you. When we look at Buddha, remember the story of Buddha? Buddha went off in the middle of the night. He leaves his child, he leaves his wife. He strips himself of all of his worldly things. He goes off to find enlightenment. And after he finds enlightenment, and his friend comes to him and finds him, he says, how did you leave your wife and your child? And he says, because I love you. Unconditional love. Human mind would have a hard time with that. That cold son of a bitch, he left his only son, just a little kid. That's cold.
Another practical way to demonstrate that is, you know, we work with street people up north, and you're there to work with them, but you don't fix their problem. They gotta go fix it. So you can be there and be a supporting buddy and a coach or whatever, but it's just from the impetus of love that you're doing it for that person, but they gotta go fix it. And that's like what Jesus was doing with the slave. He can't fix his slave system that he's stuck in.
Yeah.
But he can make him healthy, fine. But he can't go fix it. And a lot of people want to do that. You know, you'd like to give the street guy $500,000 and say, okay, go ahead, go. I don't know where the hell they're going to go at $500,000 other than to buy a bunch of brand new cars and do something dumb with it. you know, but that didn't fix it.
Where's the Good Samaritan come in?
Now, here's where, we'll address that one in a second, but I just found something in the Bhagavad Gita that's right in line, it's right in line with what Doug's talking about and what really this point we're trying to hit on.
Sorry.
Twice.
One should note very carefully that anyone who is not active, and I'm going to substitute God for Krishna here, okay, because we're more familiar
Yeah,
with that
okay.
term. Okay. One should note very carefully that anyone who is not active in God consciousness is losing himself in the material whirlpool, in the ocean of birth and death. And we're going to talk about reincarnation and the ever experience of being in that whirlpool of life and death, okay, or being awakened, okay? But this is what this is talking about. No conditioned soul actually knows what is to be done. Okay? Doug was just talking about, if you're a conditioned soul and you're listening to spirit, first of all, remember what I had on the board here a little bit ago when I said love is awareness without memory. Okay? That's the definition of love we're talking about here. This is what this is referring to when it talks about a conditioned soul. A conditioned soul is one that is aware without memory. So, now what it's going to say is this.
Well, I thought they were talking about the conditioned soul is one that's been trained in the wrong way or trained by worldly schools.
Well, this conditioned soul here is talking about a little different state of conditioning.
Well,
No conditioned soul actually knows what is to be done and what is not to be done. Yeah, you're probably right there. But a person who acts in God consciousness is free to act because everything is prompted by God from within. And then it goes on to say, and
They're saying
confirmed by a spiritual master.
You're saying the conditioned
Okay.
soul.
No, you're right.
Has
Yeah,
been
yeah, yeah, yeah.
conditioned by the world and to the whole judgmental thing.
Right. You're right. You're right.
Definitions are a toughie when you try to figure out where that writer was coming from when he
Right.
said that.
But you're right. You're right. The conditioned soul would be somebody who is trapped in with the trappings of the physical
They're
material world.
Conditioned by their memories.
Right.
Their world experience.
Right. But
Okay.
But what he's really, what this is alluding to is you will be prompted. Each of us will be prompted by Spirit. The Christian would say the Holy Spirit will guide you. This book would say that Krishna would guide you. We will all be guided to act. You know, it's not like we're going to become a lump on a log and do nothing. It's not like we're going to run off to the mountain and go hibernate. If we're going to be spiritually acting and being catalyst for spirit to work in this world. So that, you know, there's two different states for us to have here. That's it. You can have the one which has all the attachments to your belief systems, based on your memories, giving your values to things, judging each moment relative to whatever, or stepping to a higher level of perception, or not perception, higher level of awareness. I don't want to use perception because perception would mean that you're going to analyze it with this. Okay.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But yes, we're either, and that's why I said in my book, you're going to react or interact in any given moment. Christ was here to teach man that very thing. Remember, someone slaps his cheek, turn the other one. Well, the natural reaction would be you hit him back. That's the human condition. Someone hits you, you hit him back. What did we say after 9/11? We got to get somebody. I don't care. We got to. We got to hit him back.
And yet we can see now that if we had done it differently, we'd have come out way ahead.
Oh, certainly.
Oh, no
We
question.
had the sympathy of the entire world,
Yeah.
and you know,
Yes.
Good.
yeah.
I said right after 9/11, what we should have done was to go over to Afghanistan, which is where most of these people, terrorists came from.
Al-Qaeda.
I said, go over there and drop turkeys on them, ham, all kinds of food. They were literally starving to death, right? Rather than sending soldiers over, drop food. Well, what do you think would have happened? I know what would have
I would
happened.
have confused them, yeah.
What would have happened?
What would have happened was we would have won the hearts and minds of those.
That's right.
Those people would have looked up there. I love America.
We'd have come out way ahead.
I love those people. How can I help
We'd have been
spread?
so far ahead.
How can I help spread this belief and you know what this country's doing? How can I help? What can I do to work with you? Not, here's a gun, I gotta go kill somebody now because my cousin's dead. My mother just died. You know, I mean, rather than making tens of thousands or millions of terrorists that are going to fight us for who knows how long,
Right, their whole lifetime.
their whole lifetime. And who would blame them?
No,
I mean,
no.
from a human perception,
Right.
from a human, I said this to Sumi the other day. I said, you know, we talk about a war on terror. As far as the rest of the world is concerned, I would say, in terms of a nation, we look like the biggest terrorist on the face, we're the
Yeah.
biggest bully on the planet.
That's right.
We got our weapons of mass destruction, but you can't have any, and if you don't listen to us, I'm sorry, but we gotta just wipe you out.
And the
You know,
dumbest.
end of story. Because only we are good enough to have them. And I look and say, could we really be trusted with these? Not to do. We've dropped the bomb. You know, we're the only ones who've dropped the atomic bomb. We're the only ones who do these things. Not that the others are you know, saintly. But what I'm saying is, we're in no position to judge this world and to mandate who's going to do this and that. And I look and I say, if you're going to talk about terrorists, this country is viewed by many, especially in the Arab world, as being the biggest terrorist that ever was.
Sure.
And when they paint us and say, that's Satan, we made it easy for them
Right.
to portray this. I mean, but that's politics. I don't want to get into politics. What I want to do is address awaken asleep in unconditional love, or what we call human love.
Can I ask you about the diagram there? I can see where being in the middle or sort of being in balance is always a good thing. Balance in whatever you do seems like a desirable state to be in. Now, you talked about vibrations, high, low vibrations. Is there some direction where the vibrations are higher or lower, or how do vibrations fit into this?
Okay, vibrations fit in like this. In terms of good and evil, you have different degrees. Let's just say, let's give this a 20, a 30, a 40, a 50, a 60. And you know what? Let me go get something. I'll be back in 1 second. There's a book. Anybody ever hear of, I think his name's Watkins, Dr. Watkins?
Yeah.
Hang on 1 second.
Good question. No, good question.
I think of goodness being a higher vibration.
So do I. That's why I said it's
The
a good
left.
question. I would have thought that too.
Which way is up in the vibration, left or
I
up?
was just thinking of that as a human mechanism for describing something. Just to say that's a different frequency than this is. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, there's
measure
certainly,
that, or
we can certainly measure energies,
You can measure
thought levels
energies.
and activity, and there does seem to be higher, lower
There is
vibrations.
a different, yeah, you're right, there's a
Different
different
people.
energy from fear
Yeah,
and love.
then the judgment comes into
And
that
the
too.
judgments that come with them, or don't, yeah. Yeah.
Well, what we've got, we're going to take this off for a second. Now I'm going to go back to the Course in Miracles for a second. And the Course in Miracles talks about 2 complete thought systems. Anybody ever read that?
Heard of it from you.
Yeah, you
You
told
mentioned it
us.
before.
Okay, it's in the book. 2 complete thought systems. Now I'm gonna say that one is awake and one is asleep. These are the complete thought systems. And this is what most people in the Course in Miracles that study it don't recognize. That even though the sleeping one is unreal, It's unreal. Doesn't mean you can't experience it. We're all here experiencing an unreal world. As long as you, remember what the Bible says, as you believe, so shall it be. If you believe it, if you accept it, if you say, okay, I can accept this is real, look, see what time it is? I can tell you tomorrow, what the weather's going to be. They can tell you, that's real. Ow, see, it's real. No. The mind tells you it's real, you believe it, it's a real experience for you. Even though it's an erroneous thought system. The dimensions that we talk about, frequencies, are they real or unreal? This world is unreal, and I hate to say the dimension above this is unreal. The one above that's unreal. Bible says there's wars going on in heaven. Hate to break it to you. Hate to break it to all the Christians. They're off to heaven. They're going to go to a war. Whoa, wait a minute. I thought I was going to go meet God. I thought I'm going to go hang out with Jesus. I thought I'm going to just be at peace. How can there be wars in heaven? Because it's part of a system. It's not necessarily real, but it's part of a system. It has power. It has power as long as you believe in it. You believe in it, it's got power.
Okay, that's why the word belief can fit into religions. And yeah, you're going to hang on tight and believe and tighten up those sphincter muscles and believe, and then God will like you better. That's the distortion that Christianity pumps into it.
The better you are, the more
But you
likes.
don't have to. But when your awareness and your consciousness shifts to a place where you get some sense of being connected to this energy we nickname God, no, you can see all the rest of it happening without being connected to it. You can see it all happening in that snarl of unreal without being connected to it. And if you explain that to somebody in the unreal realm, it scares the heck out of them. That's a very scary thing. Unconditional love is a very scary thing to people living on the planet. So if they come and they blow up your Twin Towers, it would be a very scary thing to go to the person who just did it and said, geez, I'm sorry, what did we do to you in the last 50 years that caused that? What can we do to reconcile all this and fix it? And they would say, the scary people would say, boy, are they going to get you because you're really vulnerable. No, you're not. You can't be frightened. It's not an issue. You're seeing it from this awake system, awareness system, this consciousness. That fear is moot. Yeah.
But the people with the human thinking minds are saying they're showing signs of weakness.
So what you're saying is there's
Who
no
says-
frequencies?
Who's showing signs of
sorry?
weakness?
There's no, in ultimate
The
reality,
human
there's
thinking
no
mind.
frequencies.
In
the-
ultimate
The
reality,
rest of the people, like the neocons
what
in
we
Congress,
experience is not
say he's
true and real.
showing
That's true.
weakness.
Yeah.
Within
And it's just the other way
thought
around.
system
Let's see where they're coming from.
that
Yeah.
egos are playing in, of course there's frequencies. Take a look. Now, in terms of the thought
Wait a minute,
system.
before you erase that, so you're awake, you can be awake and still have ego.
You're not going to be awake. No.
Because you just said there's two thought systems, awake
There-
and asleep. And
There's
both
awake and asleep. Okay. If you're going to talk about, first of all, let me say this. The Course in Miracles would define it this way. when you reach atonement,
What's
okay,
atonement?
at 1 minute, at 1 minute, when you reach that state,
Okay.
okay, which is where you began, what are you going to find? This is what the Course says you're going to find. You never left. You never left it. Interesting. You never left.
It's one thing.
Atonement sounds like you just paid your dues and now you can join the club.
You can join the club.
Some-
Well, actually,
That's-
yeah.
it has, has a slightly pejorative quality to that, in that you had to pay your dues first.
Well, if you look at it as atonement, if you look at it at 1 minute,
Okay, but
okay, at 1 minute, well, wait a minute. God is love, okay? God never changed. If God never changed and love never changed, and you come from that, guess what? You never changed.
no.
No one has changed.
You have another word for atonement, could be reclamation. You reclaim it back.
Reclaim, yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, I was going to do a press release not too long ago. I got it in the other room, and it was going to be called Reclaiming Your Soul. And I was going to talk about what's really going on. And I wasn't quite sure exactly how I would phrase that because, you know, I know most of the time when you say things like this, it's going to just go right over their heads. And it does. And this is one of the reasons why most of the time when I do a press release, it's totally ignored. Which is maybe it's a good thing because, you know, I'm
I
able
don't
to sit
know,
here and talk.
but you do that and somebody goes click.
Well, somewhere, somebody, no question, someplace.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I started saying,
I never thought of it that way before.
Power versus Force. This is written by Dr. Watkins. Hawkins. You're right, Hawkins. And here he's got a chart. He does kinesiology testing and chart. So you're familiar with his chart and his frequency. And okay. Yeah, there was a guy who read my book and came in here, gave me another book called The Disappearance of the Universe, and then he got into this, and so he brought me a DVD for me to watch, and then he wants to discuss it. So I copied this chart off of here, and I thought, well, that's interesting, and there is some degree, how would I put this? Within the definition and the rules of the illusionary world, okay, this would be true. There are levels. In other words, two complete thought systems. Each has their own rules to follow. If you want to play in the ego arena, you will be on an evolutionary track. This book says there's two ways to get back to the awakened state. One is the evolutionary track, where wars are part of it. The other is simply collapse duality and just be awake. That's the long and short of this book. I mean, you know, there's a lot in here.
Two paths. So
Two
one is
paths.
the evolutionary
There's two paths.
growing in stages.
Exactly.
Okay.
There's two paths you can always choose. I would say that 99% of the population right here in this time on this planet is choosing the evolutionary path. It's what our religious teachings are about. This one doesn't teach that that's the way, the ultimate way. It says the ultimate way is to just stop it, put it down, and wake up and listen. And then, to me, this is the same thing that Christ was teaching. Okay? Now, what did Christ teach us to do? What did Christ say to do? What was the highest teaching that Christ came here and delivered?
Well, love your neighbor.
Love?
As yourself.
Love your neighbor.
Unconditionally. What did we say?
I don't know if that's correct,
But
but
I
anyway.
wonder though, but if his other, his.
Hey, look at, see?
I-
Love your neighbor.
As yourself.
Oh, yeah, but when that said, as yourself, now, here's the problem.
Okay, yeah, as yourself can be a, yeah.
Now, I'm gonna put like this. As your spiritual self.
Yes.
Not as your ego self.
Oh,
Here's the
oh.
problem. People love their neighbor as they love themselves. They don't love themselves
They're gonna
because
start something.
they're loving the ego. Okay? Jesus didn't mean that. If you love your neighbor as you love yourself, well, no wonder why the world's acting the way it's acting.
Well, the goal is to treat everybody equally.
Equally. Exactly. The spiritual self, which is one with
Yeah.
God. Okay? Now, if we loved everyone this way, how could you do that, first of all? Jesus taught us how to do that. What did he say? Do not do one thing. You want to experience this, there's only one thing that you can't do. Judge.
Yeah, but you like
Well, yeah.
This is why I said, love is awareness without a memory.
hot chocolate, spiced apples.
Judge. And what do you do to judge? How do you judge? I got to use a memory to judge. I have to.
Compared to what?
I got to compare this moment. I got to give a value to it. I know that this person's starving. I got to feed them. I know what's going to happen to them. The truth of the matter is, I don't know jack. I really don't know. Course in Miracles says, you really want to become awakened? Know nothing. Know nothing about this moment.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Truly,
Yeah.
how could you love unconditionally if you have values placed on everything? You can't. Einstein said, I want to know how God thinks, the rest of the details. How does God think? You think God's judging us? First of all, that's the first step that we have to get to. We have to look and say, does God judge?
No.
No. Does God allow?
Yes.
Within the completed system of the ego, both this world and the dimensions beyond this world, there is cause and effect. That's different than judgment. You know, these are just universal laws. Law of gravity works. It's going to work all the time. There needs to be no judgment about it. It's going to happen. Cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. Now that's within the system. There's another way of experiencing. You can withdraw your attention from the system. And that's to the Father. He said, I pray for those you've given me, they're no longer of the world. They were still here. They were still embodied. They were still living in this world with physical bodies. What changed? He showed them to live without judgment. Doesn't mean they did it 24/7. Doesn't mean they pulled it off. But he taught it to them. In that moment, in that one moment, they were awake. Paul talked about dying on a daily basis. This is what he was talking about. You don't judge and you're interacting, you're alive. You judge, you go back to death. Life and death, life and death, life and death. The only permanent, the only thing that's forever is life. You can't kill life. That's the permanent. You can, however, experience death. Each of us has had our turn at experiencing death.
I still don't follow the vibration part though. I thought that was a good question and I still don't have the answer.
Okay, well, let's go back to the vibration part. What we're gonna talk about the vibration part. Does vibration,
So
are
part
there
of the-
frequencies
that's part of
within?
That's part of the evolutionary learning process.
As part of the evolutionary
Where you
learning
can
process,
bring
the
yourself to
vibrations,
higher and higher levels,
frequencies.
higher frequencies,
Yeah, frequencies.
approaching the light and.
There you go.
I can't imagine there's not an evolutionary process. We
Well-
started out as monkeys and
Uh-oh.
had a hell of a
Maybe
time.
you
Uh-oh.
Right?
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
And then we
All
started
right.
to figure out.
Go ahead, you talk about that.
Huh?
You talk about it, go ahead.
And then we figured out who we are.
Right.
Scared the hell out of us.
Go ahead, yeah. No, I agree within the confines of the ego world, let me say the ego conscious state, there is evolution. Yes. And it's true and valid within the illusion.
But I heard scientists haven't been able to find the genetic link. I guess there's some DNA link missing between monkeys and humans.
Oh, thank you, Lord.
And they cannot. We were just talking about last night. It's the only reason I know this.
No.
We can break into this. There was a fascinating article someplace of a guy who started in South Africa and took DNA samples from a whole bunch of people. And then he started to wander up through the north end of Africa and down to where humans next went, down into Australia and back up that way into India and up there and around through Europe and up into Scandinavia and all that. And as he went, he would, I suppose in lectures or something like that, would ask people for DNA samples. And it blew his socks off that he would find those DNA connections in South Africa, where humans did start. And he was way up in China, way up in Russia someplace, and connected up with somebody who was just across from Alaska.
Mm-hmm. But to
But he was so